It's the revelation that broke the dam. Sources from inside Buckingham Palace allege that a confidential financial report was quietly handed to King Charles, detailing what insiders are calling one of the most shocking misuses of taxpayer money in royal history.
Everybody says she's a bully. She's very nasty. Not only is she incredibly controlling, but she's a bitch about.
This also follows all the stories about her bullying staff over here in the UK, which is unresolved. NDAs stopped all that stuff coming out, but she bullied people in a very unpleasant way over here.
End of every episode, it says, like, the starring Meghan, Duchess of Sussex.
Yes.
That's how she's.
And at the center of it all, Meghan Markle. According to these reports, a royal audit uncovered irregularities tied to her time as a working royal and possibly beyond. The findings? So damning, so deeply troubling, that it said Meghan collapsed behind closed doors after learning what had been uncovered. This isn't tabloid gossip. This is a royal crisis. Allegedly, the report links Meghan to a web of questionable expenditures that royal accountants believe were misrepresented, misallocated, or worse, extended long after she stepped down. As the report circulates inside the palace.
Did you see my baby mama dance?
I mean, stop it. First of all, can I just tell you, the timing of that, we maybe watched it like 20 times yesterday, and I was like, is that her?
Oh my God.
Is that Prince Harry there with the fingers and the, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also, by the way, that wasn't yesterday.
No, true.
That was 4 years ago. So it's also a really great reminder that with all the noise or whatever people do, there's still a whole life, a real, authentic, fun life that's happening behind the scenes. I'm just grateful that now, being back on social as well, I have a place where I can share it on my own terms.
Yeah. Oh, it's so great. It's so authentic, isn't it?
Parliament is starting to stir. The public wants answers. And Meghan? She's reportedly blindsided by the scale of it all. But this is just the beginning. Because what the accountants uncovered may rewrite everything we thought we knew about the so-called royal exit. Behind the gilded palace doors, whispers of this audit have been growing for months. But it was only recently, sources say, that the findings were consolidated into a formal report and quietly delivered to King Charles's desk. No fanfare, no leaks, just a red folder labeled Confidential, Financial Review.
Oh my gosh, I worked so hard.
Mornings are as I get the kids off to school. You're making fruit parfait crudité boards? Like,
my God.
boom. She's.
What was inside stunned the palace. The report allegedly outlines a trail of taxpayer-funded expenses tied directly to Meghan's time as a working royal, yet extending long past the couple's departure in early 2020. Everything from security fees to staff salaries, private transportation, wardrobe allowances, and even upgrades to residences overseas were reportedly flagged as of concern. One insider described it as a spreadsheet of secrets. But this wasn't just a routine review. The numbers weren't adding up. And according to internal sources, the auditors labeled the findings inconsistent with agreed exit protocols. That one line sparked a storm. And what happened next was chaos. If you believed the official narrative,
Harry Sussex? I have no idea. And no, Meghan, no one knew that. Like, why are you correct?
She talks like she's a one-woman band. That is not hard work. Hard work is get up in the morning, get to 7 o'clock, get into a factory or a shop and working for 10 hours on your feet, coming home knackered. That's not what happens to her.
And still being a mom.
That is
Still
not
being
what
a
happens to
mom.
her.
Meghan and Harry left royal life and cut the cord. But the numbers allegedly tell a different story. Among the most shocking revelations, a series of payments labeled as post-transition expenses that continued for over a year after the couple left the UK. We're talking private charter fees, luxury accommodations abroad, and even interior design charges, some of which were apparently billed through subsidiaries tied to Crown Estate affiliates. It gets worse. There's allegedly a $1.2 million line item marked security relocation, which insiders claim was linked to their move to Montecito. And while the couple publicly stated they would no longer rely on taxpayer funds,
I'm going to show you how to make a happy, warm, loving home after I have successfully severed my husband's ties from his entire family.
Before we even get to the main event.
When the stakes are this high, doesn't it make more sense to hear our story from us?
Oh, shut up. What do you mean the stakes are this high? Who do you think you are? Other than a latte-munching imbecile.
Harry and Meghan are the problem. And while we're going to go over all the people that they've hired, just as a great reminder, the couple have hired plenty of professionals before. People at high levels who have worked for Bill Gates, Patagonia, all these sorts of things. And yet none of them have been successful. The common denominator in everything here is Harry and Meghan.
How hard I tried, no matter how good I was, no matter what I did, they were still going to find a way.
Thanks for having us on the show. It's so awesome to be here. It's great. So let me start with you, Sam. You've lived a life with the royal family. You've had everything handed to you, but you say your life has been hard, and now you've written all about it.
Proud to, if you excuse the massive book deals, the Silicon Valley startups, the preaching videos about well-being, the podcasts, the speeches, and the major network interviews with everyone from Oprah Winfrey to James Corden. But they've barely been seen or heard at all, have they? Well, on Thursday, they'll quietly and apologetically release their $100 million.
The audit suggests that may not have been entirely true, at least not at first. Several payments reportedly originated from taxpayer funds allocated for royal family operations. But rather than ceasing after the couple's departure, those funds allegedly trickled through third-party intermediaries under the radar. Royal advisors are reportedly furious. And Parliament? They're circling like hawks.
It's about an hour-long cab ride. Never seen as grandchildren. This show is packed with a kind of spurious claims and hypocrisy that have become the Sussex signature. We learned they began making videos about their heroic journey 6 months before their Netflix deal was even announced, and right at the start of a pandemic that was killing.
As the audit reached the inner circle, so did the reaction, and Meghan's, according to insiders, was nothing short of explosive. Sources close to the palace allege that Meghan collapsed during a private video call with legal and PR advisors. Described as visibly shaken and emotionally overwhelmed, she reportedly felt blindsided by how deep the financial review had gone. What she thought was buried in bureaucratic fog had been brought into the spotlight, and it hit hard. An aide allegedly said, "She kept asking how they got access to everything." Meghan reportedly didn't know the extent of the audit. She may have believed the palace had moved on. But this wasn't just some internal paperwork shuffle. This was a full-scale forensic review. And it left her reeling. Some insiders claim she spent the following days canceling appearances, delaying calls, and refusing press engagement. Because it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the headlines that were about to drop. The report didn't stay hidden for long. According to political insiders, several members of Parliament are now demanding a full disclosure of royal finances tied to Meghan and Harry. A bipartisan group is allegedly pushing for an official inquiry into whether taxpayer funds were misused or misreported. Their key question? How much money was actually spent, and who signed off? And if that wasn't enough, one MP reportedly called for a Royal Financial Transparency Act, a dramatic name for a dramatic moment. The idea would be to require public disclosure of all taxpayer-linked royal expenditures, including so-called post-transition stipends. It's gaining traction. Because let's face it, once the public finds out that taxpayer money may have funded Meghan's Montecito lifestyle, the outrage will be volcanic. And the palace knows it. But even that's not the worst part. According to legal experts, if the allegations in the audit hold up, Meghan could face significant legal and reputational fallout. While it's unlikely she would face prosecution, the calls for full repayment and public accountability are already growing. Think of it. Headlines demanding she return millions, tabloids speculating about royal fraud, and Parliament breathing down the palace's neck. And if you think Meghan's team isn't aware of the firestorm, think again. Sources claim her lawyers are already combing through the audit and preparing counter-narratives. One alleged strategy? Blame accounting errors or bureaucratic miscommunication. But insiders say the palace isn't buying it. As one advisor put it bluntly, you can't spin numbers that don't exist. And with Meghan's brand already struggling in the UK, this could be the final nail in the coffin. But that's not all. For years, Meghan crafted the image of a wronged outsider, unfairly treated by a cold institution. But the audit, if true, paints a different picture, one where she allegedly benefited from the very system she criticized. And that contradiction? It's explosive. Royal commentators are now openly calling the Sussex exit a strategic cash grab. And while Harry has largely remained out of the spotlight, sources say he may have to answer questions too, especially if funds were used jointly. Even the palace itself is in a bind. To protect its image, it may have to distance itself further from Meghan, possibly through an official financial statement or quiet sanctions behind the scenes. And for a monarchy obsessed with optics, that's a crisis in slow motion. Because once trust is gone, it's hard to earn it back. This isn't just a royal problem. It's a business one too. Insiders claim several corporate brands linked to Meghan are reevaluating their partnerships. One source from a fashion label hinted that while there are no formal breakups yet, the temperature is cooling fast.
Why?
Because brands don't want their name tied to taxpayer scandal, especially not royal taxpayer scandal. It's a PR landmine. And Meghan, once seen as a symbol of reinvention, is suddenly being painted as a liability. Even Hollywood insiders are allegedly whispering. Executives are wary. Netflix hasn't said a word. Spotify is already out. And if this audit gains traction, Meghan's image may no longer be marketable. And that leads us to the most devastating consequence of all. This isn't about palace politics. This is about trust. And for many in the UK, that trust feels shattered. Online forums are already exploding with outrage. TikTok creators are dissecting the audit. YouTube videos with millions of views are calling this the real reason they left. The court of public opinion has convened, and the verdict isn't looking good. The calls for stripping titles? Louder than ever. The demands for repayment? Relentless. And Meghan's alleged collapse may be just the beginning of a larger reckoning. Because in the end, the monarchy may survive. But reputations? They don't always. Now here's where things take a dark turn. Several insiders claim that efforts are already underway to quietly suppress parts of the report. Whistleblowers who helped bring attention to these discrepancies are allegedly being pressured behind the scenes. According to one leak, a staffer who raised concerns over suspicious expense patterns was mysteriously removed from their post earlier this year, with zero public explanation. There are whispers that internal NDAs are being reinforced. Emails deleted. Access logs restricted. One royal commentator even suggested that this scandal may go deeper than Meghan, and that what we're seeing could be just the surface of a broader financial house of cards, one the palace desperately doesn't want collapsing in public. But try as they might, the truth is already slipping through the cracks. And what those cracks revealed next chilled the entire firm. For weeks, the narrative has centered on Meghan. But now Harry's name is entering the equation. Sources claim that several flagged transactions list joint beneficiaries, including both Meghan and Harry, raising questions about how much the Duke of Sussex knew and whether he signed off on these spending extensions. And this matters, because Harry has long painted himself as the royal in exile, cut off from the system. But if he benefited from post-exit perks funded by UK taxpayers, that entire narrative starts to look like a calculated deflection. One item reportedly causing major tension? A £280,000 security upgrade to their temporary Canadian residence, logged just months after stepping back, but still allegedly paid for through Crown channels. The optics are bad. The implications? Even worse. And now, critics are asking, was this a coordinated exit or a very expensive PR play? All eyes are now on King Charles, and what he decides to do next could define his reign. Will he defend Meghan and Harry, risking backlash from a furious public? Or will he sever the financial and symbolic ties completely? According to insiders, emergency meetings have been held between the king's advisors and royal finance officials. One proposal reportedly floated, a public declaration absolving the palace of any responsibility for Meghan's spending and placing the blame solely on external miscommunication. But others are pushing for something more dramatic, stripping remaining titles, ending all honorary associations, and releasing a formal statement disclosing the findings of the audit. A reset. Because Charles knows that keeping silent may not be an option anymore. The scandal isn't just threatening Meghan's image, it's staining the entire monarchy. And what he does next may determine whether the story disappears or explodes. This isn't just a UK story anymore. International headlines are starting to take notice, and Meghan's reputation on the global stage is now officially under threat. Major networks in the US, Canada, and Australia have begun airing segments on the alleged taxpayer scandal, with some anchors openly questioning whether Meghan and Harry's entire royal narrative was based on fiction. In the digital world, hashtags like #MeghanAudit, #SussexScandal, and #Montecitomoney have taken over TikTok and YouTube. Even former Sussex defenders are going quiet. Others are turning their backs completely. And then came the most telling sign of all. According to one Hollywood source, a high-profile production Meghan was involved with is now on indefinite hold, citing creative realignment, which everyone knows is code for corporate panic. Because once the world starts viewing you not as a symbol of freedom, but as the face of entitlement, it's game over. A confidential audit allegedly handed to King Charles exposes questionable post-exit taxpayer spending. Meghan, caught off guard, reportedly collapses after learning how deep the review went. Parliament enters the picture demanding accountability. Legal teams scramble, brands back away, and the public erupts in fury. What began as a quiet investigation could end as a royal catastrophe. And for Meghan, the fairy tale image she worked so hard to craft may be unraveling in real time. The palace hasn't confirmed anything, but the silence, it's deafening.